my God. Oh, look at that. Holy smokes, man.
Elon Musk just humiliated the CBC into oblivion yesterday, and to say the woke public broadcaster had it coming would be an understatement. You see, up until yesterday, there were a few things that all Canadians could agree on, but one pretty safe, uncontroversial fact is that the CBC is government funded. The CBC publicly state that every year in their financial report. The Liberal Party likes to brag about how much money they spend on the CBC, and Justin Trudeau himself, he likes to make jokes about giving the CBC more money in return for positive headlines.
You sometimes hear about liberal bias in the media these days, how they're constantly letting our government off the hook for no good reason. Frankly, I think that's insulting. It's clear that they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million.
But when Elon Musk slapped a government-funded media label on the CBC's Twitter account, well, all hell broke loose inside the Canadian establishment. Justin Trudeau, in typical fashion, attacked Pierre Poilievre for some reason. The CBC publicly declared their editorial independence before shutting down all of their Twitter accounts, and ministers of the Crown labeled the opposition leader a threat to Canadian democracy, all over a simple Twitter tag. In response to this, Twitter has made their government-funded media tag more clear under the CBC's page. It now reads 69% government-funded media. Honestly, does it get any better than that? Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: is there any reason for the CBC to exist in Canada today? Let me know, and let's get into it. The CBC has no problem being labeled as government-funded on Wikipedia or on YouTube, but being labeled government-funded, being labeled what they are on Twitter, that was a step too far. Just take a look at how the woke propagandists at the CBC responded to being labeled as government-funded. Exactly what they are. Our journalism is impartial and independent. To suggest otherwise is untrue. That is why we are pausing our activities on Twitter. Oh yeah, the CBC is totally impartial, except for when their chief Ottawa correspondent sued the Conservatives in the 2019 election when they had to retract untrue stories about the Freedom Convoy, which conveniently helped the government crush the peaceful protest, and when they constantly demonized Conservatives. Except for that, they're totally impartial and totally independent. And doing what the CBC does best, doing what any true impartial and independent media outlet does, they shut down replies. But predictably, the CBC is getting crushed on Twitter. The quote tweets are just amazing. Glenn Greenwald responded by saying this: "It's just a simple fact that the CBC gets Canadian government funding. If they're embarrassed by it, they should reject it. Google has placed similar labels on BBC, NPR, and CBC on their YouTube channels, but they're afraid to complain to Google the way they do for Twitter." Jordan Peterson responded this way: "No one with an iota of sense believes this. Pause away, you won't be missed at CBC. Another step forward to your well-deserved self-demolition." And Michael Malice responded this way to Twitter: "The enemy of the people is fleeing, something no Republican has been able to accomplish. God bless you at Elon Musk." All it took to get the entire CBC operation off of Twitter was to place a government-funded media tag underneath the main Twitter account of the CBC. Who knew it was that easy? Now, the best meltdown over all of this didn't come from a CBC journalist. It came from the man who signs their checks. It came from the man who benefits the most from their state-funded propaganda. Just watch this.
I think it says a lot about the Conservative Party of Canada that they're choosing to constantly attack independent media organizations.
Independent media organizations. Even he doesn't believe that.
Journalists who are working hard to keep Canadians informed and support our democracies. CBC Radio-Canada serves right across the country, delivers local news and local content in many regions of the country. That, yes, has been challenged over the past years, but the idea of adding to that challenges and laying on by attacking this Canadian institution, attacking the culture and local content that is so important to so many Canadians, really indicates the values and the approach that Mr. Poilievre is putting forward. And I think it is telling that in order to attack this institution that is important for many, many Canadians, he runs to American billionaires, the tech giants that they continue to defend in committee and in their in their approach on our legislation to make tech giants pay their fair share. Conservatives are always there to defend them. So when they're trying to attack a foundational Canadian institution, the fact that he has to run to American billionaires for support to attack Canadians says a lot about Mr. Poilievre and his values.
Hold on there. American billionaires? I thought a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, Justin Trudeau. Last I checked, Elon Musk is a Canadian citizen. Now, to be fair, Justin Trudeau's frustration is understandable. He's singing in the polls, his popularity is plummeting, and he just lost his main propaganda mouthpiece on Twitter. That's gotta hurt. Now, if that wasn't enough for you, the reaction from Justin Trudeau's convicted climate change minister, Stephen Guilbeault, was quite something. Take a look at this. Millions of Canadians rely on CBC Radio Canada. Pierre Poilievre wants to shut down these homegrown information services and sides with US media giants. Poilievre is a threat to Canadian democracy, plain and simple. Oh, nothing to see here, just a minister of the crown labeling the opposition leader a threat to Canadian democracy. Totally normal times. Totally a normal thing to say over a public broadcaster being labeled a public broadcaster. Now, at least for all of us, Guilbeault got brutally ratioed for labeling the opposition leader a threat to democracy. 4,500 replies to only 2,800 likes. Take a look at these responses. What does freezing bank accounts say about JT's values? Yeah, Poilievre is the threat to Canadian democracy. Totally. Millions of Canadians would rather keep their money out of filthy, corrupt government hands. Couldn't have put it better myself. No, hundreds of Canadians rely on CBC, and they all live in Toronto, and they're all transgendered, two-spirit BIPOCs, and they want to force all Canadians to listen to their stories. Obviously paying attention to the CBC's cringeworthy response to rage quit on Twitter out of being labeled what they themselves openly admit, and also seeing Justin Trudeau attack Pierre Poilievre, Elon Musk wanted to make sure that his label on Twitter for the CBC was a bit more accurate. Take a look at this. Canadian Broadcasting Corp said they're less than 70% government funded, so we corrected the label, and now it says 69% government funded. Elon Musk's labeling of Twitter went from an epic troll to a straight-up Canadian heritage moment. But seriously, when did basic facts become so difficult for the CBC? They don't want people to know that they're just a mouthpiece for the state? If that's the case, they should have told their finance team to not publicly state on their website how much money they receive every year from the government. $1.4 billion in 2021, $1.25 billion in 2022. Now, to be fair, it does look as though the CBC are a little bit embarrassed about how much money they receive from all of us, the taxpayer. Take a look at this in-house CBC financials graphic. Notice those little squiggly lines on the y-axis that indicate a $1 billion jump? It's a little misleading there. Looking at this graph at face value, you might think the CBC receives a small amount of government funding. Now, this is what the graph would look like if they weren't trying to mislead you. Bit of a different look there, isn't it? Pretty embarrassing for the CBC. But why do they have to take such issue with being government funded if it's so obviously funded by all of us? As mentioned in the intro, the Liberal Party of Canada doesn't hide their love for funding the CBC. On their own website, they state it publicly. Canada wouldn't be the same without the CBC. Are you sure about that? That's why Justin Trudeau and the Liberals invested $675 million in funding to revitalize the CBC. So it's not just government funded, it's Justin Trudeau funded, straight from the Liberal Party of Canada. So that's it, the 69% CBC, they're no longer on Twitter. Don't worry, I'm sure they'll be back soon enough. When Justin Trudeau calls an election, the CBC will be right there to provide some independent media coverage that definitely won't slander the Conservatives. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.